You're listening to the Speaking Tongues podcast. I'm your host, El Charisse. Each week, I sit down to a conversation with multilinguals where we discuss and celebrate language, life, and culture through our own perspectives. Episode 64, Speaking Napolitano and Mandarin. Hello, language lovers. Thank you for joining me for this episode of Speaking Tongues, the podcast and conversation with multilinguals. Today, I'm speaking with Salvatore about his native Napolitano and the language that he's studying in school, Mandarin. Salvatore speaks so many languages and is a member of the Hyper Polyglot Association, and he tells us a bit about almost all of the languages that he speaks. In this episode, he shares his tips for self-studying and how he likes to try out so many different languages. We talk about life in Naples, languages that he commonly heard growing up there, and he even tells us how to understand some differences between Neapolitan and Italian. He also tells us about the way he was taught Mandarin and how he's been able to approach learning that language. And just for fun, Salvatore, whose nickname is Mr Unicef, by the way, tells us what some of his favorite languages are. Big thank you to Salvatore for this conversation and for sharing pieces of your world with us. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review Speaking Tongues podcast on Apple Podcasts, or like and subscribe on YouTube so that other language lovers like ourselves can find the show. And if you've been a longtime listener of the show or a recent listener, you can now support the show on buymeacoffee.com. Links to all platforms are in the show notes. Okay, let's chat. Welcome back to another episode of Speaking Tongues. I am here with Salvatore. Ciao, Salvatore.
Ciao, Eli.
How are you?
Well, I'm good now. Maybe just a bit upset, like worried, I would say. But yeah, definitely good, doing fine.
I'm so happy to have you join me today for this conversation. And I'd like to start out each episode with the same question, and that is, what is your first language and which languages have you learned to speak?
Okay. So my first language is obviously Italian. Well, you can tell from my name, very typical Italian name. Then obviously I had to learn English. It was the first language I learned. Then I learned a bit of Spanish at middle school, and then ancient Greek and Latin in high school. And then right now I'm in university, I'm studying Chinese. I'm also studying some languages on my own, such as Portuguese, Swedish. I'm currently studying Tagalog / Filipino. I've studied Swahili and Asian Creole last summer. I've studied Papiamento a couple of months ago, and well, I'm still learning, but it's kind of easy. So, compared to Tagalog, I don't have to give it a lot of time. So yeah, I would say those are the languages. Mm-hmm.
That's a lot. That's really a lot. So with some of the languages that you've only studied for maybe a few months or for a summer, how did those languages come into your life?
Okay, so I would say sometimes I get attached to people and the cultural belonging to them. So I think I'm gonna give you the example for Swahili, which is basically I had these students, I was teaching her Italian, and I don't know why I was always like asking her, some words translated in Swahili, just for fun, and then I was kind of interested just in knowing how the language itself worked, right? And I was like, wow, this language is really nice, because I like the way you have to kind of like change the way you think of a language, like with the suffix, prefix. It doesn't work like English. It's got the verb tenses are like linked to the verb with the personal pronoun attached to it. So it just becomes one huge word, which is not as hard as German, but it's also, kind of nice, to see like how a language can work differently from a language that you already speak, mostly like European or Asian languages.
Yeah. And what was your experience when you were learning these languages for a short period of time?
My experience, I would say, I was well. I usually dedicate like 1 or 2 full months to a language, and then I keep practicing them like by reading, by online material. I try to do some online quizzes, or like I try to keep in touch with most of my friends. Trying to practice. I'm not saying daily, but maybe a couple of times a week. I sometimes have like language exchanges with friends of mine. So let's just say I have my friend from the Philippines, then we might talk half an hour in Italian, then the other half an hour in Tagalog. So that's definitely like helping me. It's like there's always like a practice. What I mean? It's not like after a couple of months I would just like abandon those languages behind. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, yeah,
So when you were growing up and you grew up in Napoli, right?
yeah, yeah.
What languages did you hear spoken in your home or in your community when you were growing up?
Okay. So I would say, obviously, everyone would expect I hear Italian a lot. That is true. Mostly it was like school based. Obviously in school you have to speak the standard Italian language. But then I would say I obviously grew up hearing a lot of Napolitano, as like our
Mhm.
own dialect, which is like literally everyone speaks the dialect. If you go like literally right now, I go outside in the streets and I would definitely hear someone speaking Napolitano as the dialect rather than standard Italian. And then I would say it's odd enough, but I also grew up hearing a lot of Arabic. Mostly in my years of high school, because I
Mm.
feel like I had lots of Arab friends. I used to work in this I used to help people, coming from, like maybe by boats coming to Italy. So I
Uh-huh.
was working in this community to help them, and so I would obviously to work with these people. I was like, I'm always interested in every language. So like instead of like I was teaching them Italian as well, but I was also trying to get something from their own like their mother tongues, right?
Mm. Mhm.
And so I think most of them are obviously from North Africa, and there was like a lot of Arabic dialects because as you know, obviously like there's like the standard Arabic, but then there are many varieties of dialects that change in every country. Mm.
Yeah, yeah. That's really interesting. I didn't realize like how much Arabic could be heard in Naples.
Yeah, it depends. Also, like obviously, I think I used to hang out with a lot of people that couldn't speak Italian. So that's why I think I grew up speaking English most of the times, and obviously Arabic was one of the main languages because obviously when they were speaking with each other, they obviously were using their mother tongue, which was
Yeah.
Arabic. So yeah, I was like hearing that a lot, and I think I picked Arabic without ever studying it, but just because I was hearing it a lot, and I was like having just an online dictionary made by myself on my phone notes.
Oh,
So I was
wow.
like, all right, I'm picking some words.
And when you were in you said when you were in high school, you
Yeah,
studied ancient Greek and Latin.
yeah.
Were those subjects were they compulsory? Did you have to study them? Did you choose to study them? And I guess what languages were offered to students in your high school as a second language?
Okay. So in my case, yes, ancient Greek and Latin were compulsory, both of them. We have three types of high school. So one is for scientific subjects, another one is for languages, and the other one is for we call them humanistic subjects like philosophy,
Mm.
and obviously Greek and Latin. So I picked that one. So I was not studying languages at that time. I was just doing like an in-depth study of Italian language, like grammar and culture, and the literature of English, and then obviously ancient Greek and Latin together with their related literature, like the mythology and all that stuff related. So in my case, I would say in my own high school, yes, those were compulsory, and there was no second language. It was just English and then ancient Greek and Latin. But if you were going to the languages high school, then definitely you can study English, and then you can pick Spanish or French. Or oh no, actually you can do Spanish and French, and you can pick either Spanish or German.
Okay.
Mm,
Okay.
yeah.
How was that? How was that learning ancient Greek and Latin?
It was, I would say, back then I was not appreciating it as much as I do right now. I think right now because I'm studying lots of languages, I feel like how useful, studying Latin and ancient Greek really was. Because like all mostly, it's helping a lot with European languages, with etymologies, with like the origins of the words, which I'm really fond of. And so I would say, on that note, those languages are really helping. Obviously, they're dead languages, like no one speaks those languages, even though there's like a good thing by Duolingo, which is providing Latin courses. So, like shout outs for that. But I would say that they are very useful right now. I am appreciating them a lot. I remember when I was in high school, I was not really committed to the language itself, but I was completely in love with the literature, like mythology. And even currently, I'm reading a book called The Song of Achilles, which is like
Mm.
based on Greek mythology. So yes, I'm definitely in love with that.
So, when do you think it was that you first became interested in learning so many languages? Was there a specific incident that happened, or was it, maybe working with the Arabic speaking people who were coming to your community? Was it something you saw or something you did that led you to being interested in learning all of these languages?
Okay, so I would say there was not a specific time of my life. I would say maybe towards the last year of high school, I was already like, obviously thinking of living in Italy, like going away, studying abroad. So I was like, oh wow, you know what? I can study more languages. Like I also picked Chinese. I was like, oh, maybe I can start like studying more languages because back then I was just like speaking Italian and English. So it was kind of wait for me to start a new language, and maybe it was not going to be as useful as English is. Uh, but even I remember like a lot of people were kind of like looking at me weirdly or making fun of me at times because I used to study very weird languages. So as I told you, like I've never studied Arabic, but then I started buying a book just for like a very basic level, just to
Mm.
read it, just to see what the grammar, like how the grammar really worked. So I was studying Arabic, and then I was also studying Norwegian and Serbian, which oddly enough, nowadays I only remember a couple of words. I can't really speak Serbian or like Arabic,
Mhm.
so I would only remember a couple of phrases. That is why like I never list them in the languages I speak, because I would only be able to say a couple of words, understand them. Maybe if I see, obviously I can read the alphabet, both like Cyrillic alphabet for the Slavic languages and the Arabic alphabet. But then it would be really hard to make up sentences. So I would say I've always been really drawn, onto language, like to like language learning process. But then I never really committed to it because like I was fond of the beginner's style of like learning a language, like where you have to make a vocabulary, you have to learn the new words related to, like for example, like the food page, or you have the how to say the places, like restaurant, church, market, square, all these kind of things.
Mhm.
But then when it came to sentences, I was really getting lost because I had no one that was helping me. Most were like Norwegian and Serbian. They were just like languages that I picked. I was picking up just because I liked the history, like the countries, maybe the culture. But then I really didn't have many friends back then that could really help me. So I think that it all started when I moved to Liverpool. My second semester of the first year at university, I started meeting a lot of polyglots, like people that could really speak many languages. I was like, oh wow, that is actually a thing. People can speak many languages. I was like, maybe I should like pick up more languages. I should do something, and that's when I really got into it. I was like, I was actually afraid, because I was studying Chinese. I was like, maybe Chinese is gonna take up most of the time, because obviously it requires more in-depth study, compared to other European languages. But then I was like, maybe I can do it. I can do it. And I just studied online with some apps like Boost or Duolingo. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna try a language first. I'm gonna see if I like it, if it sounds nice. And I think the first one was probably, yeah, Swedish and Portuguese were the first ones that I started. So basically after Chinese and English. Yeah.
Mhm. Let me ask you, what with
Yeah.
all the languages that you are studying, you have studied, and your interest in languages, what do you hope to do with all of them? Or
Wow.
any one of them? Or any one of them? Like, is there
I don't know.
anything that you hope to do in your life with your knowledge of all of these languages?
Yeah, so I would say last year I found my deepest passion, which is basically teaching languages.
Mm.
I do not see myself teaching in the future just because I've never really planned that in my life. But obviously, maybe the most like the finest things in life are the unexpected ones, like the things you don't plan ahead. But
Mm.
I can't really tell you. I've never really seen myself as a teacher, but right now I'm really enjoying it. I'm so passionate about it. I'm teaching online, as you know. I have like different several classes per week. I teach several languages, and I enjoy every single moment, of each class. I love my students. I love teaching. I feel like imparting wisdom, because then obviously when you teach, you're also learning from your students, right? So there's always like that kind of like discussion, exchange of knowledge, of ideas, and I'm really, I don't know, I'm a great fan of it. I'm really fond of this whole like teaching process, because I'm teaching and learning at once, and I would say it really helps me a lot, and obviously shapes up the person I am right now.
Yeah.
So I'm really glad. I'm really glad. My dream job, would be like to work with associations, such as like the UN, UNICEF. Maybe try to use as many languages as possible. Because like I have this idea that languages are like your babies, right? You have to take care of each one of them. Like on the every each one of them is like on the same level. Do you know what I mean? So that is why sometimes every day I would like read in Spanish, but then I would do some reading in the other languages as well, like in Portuguese, in Chinese, just because I don't want them to feel forsaken. You know what I mean? Um, that's why I just hope in the future I can try to find a job where I can use at least. I'm not saying all of them because it will be inhuman, impossible, but at least most of them. Yeah, it will be
Yeah.
really great.
That's amazing. I think that's really cool. So you're what's considered a hyper polyglot. And I would love to know, what does this word hyper polyglot, what does it mean to you? What importance does it have in your life? What do you think of when you hear hyper polyglot?
So obviously, if you are asking me personally, I would say I'm that kind of person who like feel satisfied and because of an achievement, but then would not make a huge deal out of it, if you know what I mean. So basically, I would feel like yes, I would feel like I reached a goal, which I was not expecting, like to reach in my life. It's a
Right.
bit like the teaching stuff, is it? So I feel like yes, I'm satisfied because I'm being appreciated, but at the same time, I feel like it just opening up brand new world for me, because like maybe I don't know, a couple of years ago, I would have never thought I would connect, with so many people that speak so many languages. And right now, I feel like I'm building even small but a community, of all people that speak multiple languages around me that I can practice with all those people. So I feel like I always say languages or it's obviously a means of communication, and as long as you're understood, you're always good to go. So like you don't need to be the super master of a language. No one is, not even like you can't even master perfectly your mother tongue, so let alone a foreign language. But sometimes I really feel like it's definitely opening yours, it's a way to open yourself up to the world, to new cultures, and also to be more, tolerant, accepting of your surrounding. So
Mhm.
definitely languages, I'm not going to say that everyone should speak many languages, but it's definitely a good way to open yourself up to the world. And sometimes I feel like people would just say, oh, I can never become a hyper polyglot, because like there are so many languages. I'm still on my fourth. I'm still studying my fourth language. But then I feel like if you really want to do something, you just go for it. Okay, it's not even a matter of time, because like even 1 hour per day is enough, for a language, and you can definitely carry on your study. Take your own pace. So you can take a slower pace, if you want to. Maybe just a couple of times per week, you can have a discussion. You can have an online video call with your friend and try to practice your
Mhm.
target language. Yeah.
Mhm. So with all the languages that you have and you've learned and you've studied, um, do you take the same approach to learning all of them? Are there some languages that require you to maybe do a little bit more reading, or some that require a little more speaking or a little more writing practice, or whatever works for you? Like how do you approach learning them? Is it all in the same way, or do you use different methods to learn these languages?
Yeah, so I would say obviously every language is different. So each of them requires different amount of time and as well as different material. So I would say obviously if it's European language, like you at least like Romance language, like European based language, then I would say that would require me less time because it's obviously like related to my mother tongue. Um, Originally from Latin or Greek, So in that case, it would not be as demanding as
Mm,
like let's say Asian languages or African languages. I'm obviously thinking that Chinese is probably the one that obviously requires more reading, more practice because it's not just you're not learning an alphabet, you're learning new words daily.
mm,
And like imagine having, I don't know, even just 20 words, new words per day. You have to learn at least 35 new characters. So you see, like that is definitely something different because like you're not learning letters, you're learning new words, and you
mm-hmm.
need to know how to write them. So it's not just like the reading. Okay, yeah, I know the word is pronounced like that, but then you have to nail the tone. Okay, so the
Right.
intonation needs to be correct, the pronunciation. Otherwise, you will end up saying something completely different. And then you have to know how to write them. We have to write essays. We have to handwrite essays in Chinese. So like imagine having an essay to handwrite in 1 hour, and
Mm,
you obviously have to write all the characters in Chinese. So yeah, I would say in that case that Chinese would be the language that requires me just like slightly more time. I'm just lucky because I study Chinese at university, so like it's really easy to keep up with the study because obviously I have a class every day. So it's not like I'm not studying Chinese for a couple of weeks and then I'm going back to it. It would be really, really hard. Yeah.
mm, yeah, I would imagine. So take me back to Napoli. Um,
Yeah.
I know that Napolitano is a very distinct dialect within Italy and is widely spoken. And I'm pointing this out because I know that some other dialects in I don't isn't I'm not saying dialects. I'm saying dialects. Some other some other uh dialects in Italian uh and languages spoken in Italy. I know that they are um not so widely spoken. So like in the north of Italy, a lot of people don't speak Piemontese, for example.
True.
I know that Napolitano is a very distinct dialect. In Naples, I know that a lot of people speak it. It's really widely spoken. Tell me some things about Napolitano that differentiate it from standard Italian.
Okay, so well, as you said, it's very different dialect. Even from the other dialects, it can be at times considered to be an actual language. Because it's so diverse, it's so different from the standard Italian that people sometimes can't really understand what we're saying. You might probably catch some words, but then if I start, I don't know, like speaking sentences, it will be really, really hard to catch up. With what I'm saying.
Mhm.
Um, so I would say what makes it's a very peculiar language, and what makes it particular is well, first of all, the sound is really harsh. Compared to standard Italian, is we have a lot of like I call them dead sounds because the words are not ending with a vowel anymore. So we're dropping all the vowels,
Mm,
and it's just gonna end in a consonant. You will feel like it's gonna be like Spanish words, but then obviously Spanish words they have their own melody. They have
mhm,
their own like soft sounds. But then in Napolitano, most of the sounds I would say are really, really harsh. And then there's like the grammar that obviously it's completely different. Like where you would use a subjunctive verb tense in Italian, then you would use a conditional tense in in Napolitano. So that would like make things really hard even for us to translate into
mm,
Italian. And lots of times we are considered to be illiterate or like uneducated when it comes to like us trying to speak standard Italian because obviously we might make some mistakes because we would obviously process the thinking in our own dialect, right?
mhm.
Let's just take just to set you an example. We have the
Okay.
articles. You're studying Italian, right? So we have the articles. We have for the definite articles. Okay, so we have il, la, or lo. Okay,
Mhm.
um, let's just say that yeah, I would say in Napolitano we just drop the L, so we just keep the last sound. So it would be like la becomes a, lo becomes o, and fun fact, even il just stays o. So it's like we only have two
Hmm.
articles. We only have a and o. So it actually makes things easier on these aspects. But then you would think, why wouldn't I have like il? How can I make like a word starting with like another consonant? Because you know that law is only used with like words starting with Z, S, or like PS. It's kind of like diphthongs. Um, but then in Napolitan, we just use like O for everything. So it's really hard. Lots of people actually find it difficult to translate and use the il, the article il in Italian with like specific words.
Somebody who's going to go to Naples and let's say they maybe have a little bit of understanding of Italian, do you think it would be difficult to communicate or to communicate with with someone who's from Naples and do you think it would be difficult for a person to get around Naples? Do you think it would be difficult for them to communicate?
So let's just say, obviously, if you're a tourist, like you're coming from abroad, then I mean, obviously you can try and speak English, but if let's just say you're speaking Italian, right? They're gonna adapt, I think, their Italian to the way you're speaking. So if you're speaking like standard Italian, obviously they are not gonna use the dialect. So you can
Mm,
rest assured they're not gonna use the dialect. However, there are some words that when we translate them, let's just say you're in the city center. Okay, so obviously you're gonna hear the dialect only. But let's just say that you speak in Italian to our shop assistant, then obviously she's gonna speak really perfect Italian with you. But then we use some verbs, that might differ. For example, like let's just take dare lezioni, like to teach classes, like to give someone a class, right? Dare
mhm.
lezione. But then because in Napolitano we say like fare lezione, so we would translate it with the verb fare. And let's just say you probably studied Italian from a book. You've only studied like the standard Italian from a book, and you know that it's like dare lezione.
Mm,
So you will go like, oh, maybe I got it wrong, or maybe you're not expecting to hear that verb next to the noun lezione. Do you know what I
mm.
mean? So you would probably get confused just with this kind of like very small details that you probably won't even notice, but that can make a difference
Right,
sometimes.
right. The reason I asked that question is also because when I went to Sicily a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
and before I went and I was telling some people like, "Oh, I'm going to Sicily. I'm going to Sicily." And a few people who were Italian American said to me, no one's going to understand you when you go to Sicily because they all speak Sicilian. And my Italian's not perfect, but I can get by in Italy.
Mhm.
And I'll be honest, I was a little nervous because I was thinking, I hadn't been to Sicily before, and you're telling me that all my Italian that I've been studying for years and years and years is gonna be useless. And I was really anxious about it. And then when I got there, everybody spoke to me in Italian and I didn't hear any Sicilian being spoken. And I was in Palermo, so that's probably
Mhm.
why. So I had this conversation with several Sicilian people on this show before, and I asked them the same question. Like, if somebody were to come to Sicily, um, would they have a problem being understood? And I think it's because, I think the reason why this question comes up for me is because I know that Sicilian language and Neapolitan language is like so strong. Like the culture is just something
Mhm.
that we know outside of Italy. It's something that I think a lot of people may think that Sicily and Naples is like truly indicative of all Italian culture, which we know that it's not, right? But I think
Yeah.
that because because these regions of Italy have so much history and they are so distinct, I think it's easy for someone to think like, if I go to Naples, no one's going to understand me. And it's easy to get caught up in maybe stereotypes. So
Mhm.
I wanted to ask that question so that we could be clear. We could be clear that that wouldn't be the case. So, um, since we're talking about Naples, what are some things about Naples that are really special to you? What are some things that you would want someone who's never visited to know about your hometown?
Um, mm, well, I was actually talking to a couple of friends of mine, a couple of days ago, because they obviously want to come and visit Naples, obviously after COVID, and they were trying, they were asking me, like, where would you take us? What are the peculiar, like the particular places? So I would say. Um, well, first of all, as you know, Naples is like the place of pizza, right? Like the place of origin of pizza. So, like, I would say the most particular thing would be like to taste the real Napolitan pizza, like the margherita. That would be maybe like the best place where to taste it. We also have mozzarella, which obviously I think you've heard of.
Mhm.
It's all over the world right now, but I every time I come back from the UK and I taste the mozzarella here, it's always a new adventure, a new experience. So yeah, that's definitely as when it comes to cuisine, when it comes to food, then I would say Naples is like the place to go to. As for sightseeings, I feel like I'm really close to the Vesuvius, as the volcano, which is just like something that it's just a place where you wouldn't really go, just like on a normal like daily basis, like on a normal day. But I remember that I had really beautiful experiences on the volcano with like a couple of friends of mine that came to visit me. Um, and it's a really nice place. I really like it. Like when you reach the top, where you can walk on top, and it's a really nice experience. Yeah,
Mm.
it's definitely something I would do once again. Obviously, you probably are familiar with like the Pompeii ruins. So yeah, that's also like something that you might want to visit, obviously in case you go there. But again, it's not. If you go to Pompeii, you might just feel sad. You're just gonna do that all day long and just feel sad for the rest of the day. But definitely, I would go. The Vesuvius is a beautiful experience. Yeah, just go on top, and also I would say, as you know, like mostly south of Italy is very religious, right? So we have many things related to like Christianity. Like we have this thing called the Cristo Velato, like the veiled Christ,
Mhm.
and just like a statue, but it's like so well made that you can actually see all like the facial traits of the Jesus. You can see like the lineaments of the veil, and it looks so real. So that's also like it's like it's hidden in one of the neighborhoods. We call them the hoods. The neighborhoods in Naples, but it's really worth it. Again, if you're not from here, you might never find out that that thing is there. So it's really good, if you obviously come and you have like a tour guide or someone from the place that can like take you around. Yeah.
Right. That's
Mm.
really cool. So I'm looking at a map as you're talking, and I
Oh,
I so I see Vesuvius. I mean, this is what's really funny is because I've been here and I still needed to look at a map and just kind of understand. So, you know, Ischia, Capri, Sorrento, those are all part of like the city of Naples, huh?
yes. Well, they're still part of the region.
The
Yeah.
region. Yeah.
And yes, there are three islands. So Capri, Ischia, and Procida. So Sorrento, that one is not an island. It's just the coast, like the Amalfi Coast.
Mm.
Yeah, so that one is a beautiful place indeed. And also this, it's called the lemon place, because that's where the lemons are originally from. They have the limoncello you probably heard of.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mhm. Cool. What are the people like? Tell me what the people are like in Naples.
Ah, what are the people like? I would say they're very warm-hearted. One thing that has ever like surprised me, amazed me, um, that something like very um, I would say that is like part of the inner being of a Napolitan person. It's like they're very warm-hearted. They would always um, host you, always welcome you into their homes. They will always like make food for you. Like food is a thing, in Naples. Like they will always invite you maybe for lunch, for dinner. Mostly, maybe in other countries they would invite you out for dinner, but in Naples it would be like more. I invite you to my own place, to my house for lunch, for dinner, for a meal. And then it's good because obviously you usually have like these you feel the warmth of home, don't you? Then you have this kind of things like with your discovering like another family. You see like the way they treat you. They might they usually like this with everyone, not only local Italian people. They might feel like this with some to tourists. Maybe if you just talk to them, mostly if you obviously are able to speak Italian, they might feel like obviously amazed. They were gonna be surprised by you speaking Italian. So that's definitely gonna be like one more point to your like an advantage for you. Um, and yes, I would say yeah, they're just like warm-hearted, and that's something that I also encountered when I moved to Liverpool. Usually they say that British people are cold-hearted, like the opposite, right? But then I feel like in it's the opposite. Like the northern part of Italy. Usually people are like they're just busier. They're not cold-hearted. They're just busy, and obviously they have like other things to think about. It just like the business world, isn't it? So I would say like in the south we're more based on affections, based on like the family lineage, like the relatives. If you're a friend of my friend, then you're automatically my friend. You know what I mean? So it's that kind of thing, which is, by the way, fun fact, is very close to Chinese culture. They've also like very based on this kind of like they call the guanxi and the xinyo, which is like the trust and the relations with people. So that's definitely something I would say for people from Naples specifically. Yeah.
That's so sweet. I love
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
Now, I understand that proverbs are really important in Neapolitan culture. Is that true?
True. Yes.
Do you have any proverbs that, maybe you would hear commonly if you're moving throughout Naples, or anything that, anything you heard growing up that maybe like anybody who grew up in Naples would know?
Yeah, so right now that you're asking me the question, I'm thinking of a game that we play at Christmas time. It's called Tombola, which is like the bingo. But specifically, we play it in a Napolitan way. So every number has got a specific meaning, and on and we have like a specific Napolitan proverb or like yeah idiomatic expression, and then it's usually translated in Italian and English.
Hmm.
Um, but some of the proverbs like that I'm thinking of right now would be one that maybe everyone will tell you is like vita Napoli e poi muore, which is like if you come to Naples, they would tell you like vita Napoli, vedi Napoli e poi muori. So like after you see Naples, you can die. It doesn't have like a negative connotation. It's like because you've seen everything in the world, you've seen the best, the most beautiful thing in the world, so you can die in peace. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's what they want to mean by this saying, this proverb. So like vita Napoli e poi muore. There's another one I really like is Nessuno è nato imparato. In Italian it would be Nessuno è nato con la conoscenza, like literally imparato, where it's like no one is born with no one was ever born with knowledge. So like you never stop learning, right?
Hmm.
So no one was born like a genius. Maybe there's one more. It's a bit. This they usually insert like a swear word inside. I'm not gonna use the swear word. I'm just gonna say like chi se fa I fatti suoi campa cent'anni. Like whoever minds their own business will live for 100 years. So like that's something that really relates to Napolitan culture because I think Napolitan people they really love gossip. You know, um, so we will go like let's just say that something happens in your neighborhood or like yeah in the street where you live on, And then it's gonna be like, people are gonna, whatever happens, people are gonna open their windows and they're gonna mind your business. They want to see what happened and they're gonna ask questions. And so, we usually use the sentence like, if you mind your own business, you can live for 100 years, like you can have a long life.
Anything else about Naples that you think is particularly interesting that people may want to know?
The warmth of home, like wherever you go, wherever you go, there's always like these like beautiful perfume, like the smell of food, like wherever you are, you can always like smell something nice, something that's cooking, like even from a house to another house, you can see the chimney, like everything, the fire coming out, like maybe on Saturday they're like having some barbecue, like roasting meat, grilling. So I would say that's like very big, at least in my neighborhood. I always have like these smells all around me. And then I have they also like very rooted in family values and ancient values, such as like ancient traditions. That's something that we always keep up. We never lose traditions. Let's just say we have to, I don't know, we have to celebrate Christmas in family. Then yes, we're gonna do that. No matter that, we're gonna grow older, that we're gonna leave the country, we're gonna go abroad. We still have to be the whole family reunited. On specific occasions.
Mm.
I feel like those kind of things are really nice. When I hear from other friends, it always go like, oh no, after a couple of years, then we just lost it. We just got out of that habit. And I feel like at least my family, and I think most of the families here in Naples, they're very traditional, not conservative, but traditional in the case of like we want to keep the the values, the traditions, like belonging to maybe our grandparents, our ancestors. So that's definitely something nice.
Yeah. You're in university. You're in university in Liverpool, um, and you're studying Mandarin. What made you decide to make Mandarin your course of study?
Okay, good question. It wasn't, let's just say, it wasn't a really deliberate choice.
Okay.
Basically, I wanted to carry on my Arabic studies. So, as you know, I was speaking a lot of Arabic when I was in high school. So, obviously, when I applied for university, I wanted to carry on my Arabic studies. But then what happened was that the University of Liverpool ran out of all the Arabic teachers on that year.
Oh no.
Yeah, so I couldn't pick Arabic. And then I was like, oh, you know what? I can go for Japanese. But then again, there was no Japanese offer. There was only like an evening course. It was like extra that I could have
Mhm.
like taken anyway. So I was like, okay, I need to enroll in a specific subject. Which one is going to be? The languages offered, most of them were just like European. And so obviously I was like not really interested because I was like, I can study them without a proper university course.
Mhm.
And Chinese was the only one. It was thrilling, back then because he said like year abroad in China. So like, I was like, oh, I can get like an year abroad and I can study in the UK and then like also move to a different country, like in this case, China. Um, and yeah, I'm actually right now, I can say I'm so grateful there was no Arabic. Like I made that choice of studying Chinese. Right now, I'm completely in love. Like I fall in love with each single character. Like it's not even the words, like the character, which is beautiful, like the history behind it, the whole like cultural background. I'm really in love with the language. And I think that's also like obviously due to the good teacher I got. Because I feel like yes, I've got some good teachers, high school and middle school that always like kind of encouraged me. But then I got the best teacher at University of Liverpool. And she's like she was always making the each class really fun, interactive, and it was always diverse. You
Mm.
know, you could never get bored really. So I feel like Chinese is not the language that you can study. Let's just say we want to study Spanish, right? So you can go like on the first day, you can like, okay, como estás, like how are you, todo bien, is like everything is all right. So you can study bit sentences, you can study like the equivalent translation in English. But then in Chinese, you will start with the first day is gonna like, okay, how to say knife, how to say strength, and you're gonna like, when am I gonna use these words? Because then you actually have to start with the simpler characters. So you actually see the whole learning process is so different
Mm.
from European languages. So yeah, and I'm so glad that she made every single class so fun. And I remember like a beautiful example is when before starting a class, she was like having us meditate, and like control our breathing for 5 minutes, and it was really good. She was like, "You're gonna focus more. You're gonna have more energy for the class." It was really good. Mm.
That's really amazing. So I actually didn't realize this. So let me just make sure I understand. When you started learning Mandarin, you're starting learning the simplest characters and not
Yes.
just translating, phrases like common phrases that you would hear in like a European language, for example.
Yeah, exactly. You got it. So that's how it works, because like in European languages, it would be really easy. You can just say, like, I'm going to the supermarket, like I'm going shopping, or we can watch a movie together. But then if you make the sentence in Chinese, they're going to be so long and they're going to have like so many different characters. And you have to start from the basic ones, because then imagine knowing how to say the sentence, but then you cannot write it down. So how can you actually take an exam? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that is why we're gonna start with like the simple characters and then gradually build up to the harder ones. Mm.
Never even realized that. And I think that's amazing. Um, how so you're loving it, you're loving Mandarin. And I know that you are how many years have you been studying Mandarin now?
3 years now.
3
Mm.
years. Okay. So outside of school, what methods have you been using to help you along your studies?
I would say mainly with online classes. Let's just say that the COVID was obviously negative thing for the entire world, but it was also positive for people that wanted to learn something new. I feel like there were more courses online and even for free. So I was like trying to enroll myself in like most of them, even though like I was doing lots of languages at the same time. I was trying to really concentrate. I usually keep record, like I keep a log for each language. So I have a notebook for every single language, and then I write the vocab. For example, like let's just say that today I want to learn how to say the family members. Okay, so I'm gonna write mom, dad, brother, sister, and then I make sentences like my brother is tall, or like my dad works in the hospital. You know what I mean? So all these kind of things, and I would start with the simple sentences. Obviously, that's something I can do with European languages, like languages that don't have like a different alphabet. Then in that case, I can also try and do it on my own. I I also like comparing languages. So I also have a specific book where I compare the languages, like the Slavic languages. So I put like Serbian and Polish. Sometimes I put Russian, and I try to see the similarities and the differences. And then I compare the Romance languages. I have like Catalan, Galician, Portuguese, and I try to write the same sentences, and then see how they might differ,
Hmm.
where they're similar. And you will actually be amazed like at how similarities there are, even in languages you might not really think of, and then you're like, oh wow, they're not even related, but they have similar words.
Yeah,
Mm.
that's cool. That's really amazing. So, I mean, does it matter or do you know like what level you are in Mandarin right now?
Yes, I'm actually right now preparing for a C1 exam.
Oh,
um
cool.
so yeah. Or even though right now they're like changing the exam levels. They were 6, now they want to make him 9, but that's not like that's not certain yet, so they're still like changing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Wow, that's really, really exciting. That's exciting. That's that's actually very exciting. And I wish you all the best in your studies and your exams and everything that is coming up for you in the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So you told me before we started recording that you have this nickname of Mr. Unicef
Yeah.
back in your hometown. I would love to know how you got this nickname and how you hope to keep meeting people all over the world once you have completed your studies.
Okay, so as for the nickname, yes. So I owe this nickname to my very close friend Gio from Georgia. Basically, we were I was enrolled in this cultural exchange program when I was in high school. So basically, I was hosting a person coming from a certain country. So that area happened to be Georgia, and I hosted this guy. Um, and I remember that obviously we wanted to he's a good cook, like he can cook really well. And so like we tried to have like a night where we were like making different dishes, like combining the cultures. Like I was making an Italian dish, he was making Georgian typical dishes. And I was like, we can maybe try to invite more people. And I remember we were like on a train station. And that was the first time I met this guy from Gambia, who's also he was still here. He's still working here in Naples right now. And basically, I was just talking to him. I was like, oh, like we're gonna have these night where we're just like gonna combine. We're gonna taste like different cuisines. Maybe you can come, and we can also try to make a special dish from your own country. And it was like, oh yeah, definitely, I'm in. Can I invite some friends? And it was like, obviously like calling other friends. So then night we were like 10 of us. It was like 10 of us. And we were like trying to taste, different cuisine, different dishes. So that was definitely cool. And I don't know why, he just started like, oh, you're definitely Mr. UNICEF. Because I think he knew that my dream job was like to work in this kind of like, world organizations such as UNICEF. So it was like, oh, you definitely are Mr. UNICEF. Like you would just go to every person you meet in the street. You would just talk to them, and you would just like try to, I don't know, like make them feel involved. Because obviously all these people, I mainly go to people that are not from my country. I talk to them just because sometimes I feel like they might be lost, or like they might need some help. And I always want them to feel welcomed in my country, and also feel like involved in whatever's going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's like and it was like, that's definitely your nickname, that like suits you perfectly. And that's when he started calling me that, and I changed my Instagram name to like Mr. UNICEF. Yeah.
So, for anyone who is interested in getting in touch with you or maybe joining one of your classes, please let us know how we can find you and how we can find your classes.
Yeah, so I would say actually everything lies on Instagram, which is basically if you just follow my account, I will post every day that there's like a class. Most of them are for free. Every day there's like a class, I would just like post it on my Instagram, so you can see my Instagram stories, and you can say, okay, there's a class now. And if anyone who's interested, like they can just drop me a message. My name is like Mr. UNICEF, so they can just like look for me. And yeah, I would be more than glad. Actually, it was this week. It was yesterday. Yeah, it was Thursday. Basically, I usually have a Chinese class on Thursday, but then because there were like many newcomers, they like asked me personally to have like a class where we would start from scratch. I decided to have like a completely free class, starting 1 hour earlier, and like just invite as many people as possible. Just like, okay, whoever is interested in studying Mandarin right now and they want to start from scratch, from the very basics, then you guys can come. And actually a lot of people came, and I was so happy because like just seeing the people being interested, feeling some interest in studying Mandarin, it's definitely well, a great achievement for the world, I would say. So mm.
I will put your Instagram information in the show notes so that people who are listening to this episode will be able to click the link and follow you, and hopefully they'll be able to take a class or two with you.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Let me ask you, do you have a language or two that you enjoy speaking the most?
That I enjoy speaking the most. Okay. So I would say Chinese is definitely a language that I love speaking. Also because I think just because I practice it every day, I have to speak every day in class. So obviously I just love it, the way it sounds. And maybe another one that I enjoy speaking would be Indonesian. Yeah,
Hmm.
I enjoy speaking that one. I also like the way it sounds. I feel like they have very special sounds, that you can't really find in other languages. So
Mhm.
yeah, Chinese and Indonesian, I would say. Mm.
Is there a language that you love to read in the most?
Hmm. I would say, okay, to express things. I mean, I usually read books in English most of the times. So I would say to express like deep things. I don't know why, even though lots of people say that English is like a limited language when it comes to vocabulary, I still feel like a book in English definitely will get to my heart. You know, I would
Mm,
like really feel it. I would like mirror myself, like reflect myself in the book.
yeah.
Um, Definitely, I enjoy reading Swedish and Papiamento. Yeah, so I would say those languages are the ones I enjoyed reading a lot. Like if I just have to like read maybe like a short text, like a paragraph or a chapter of a book, I would definitely enjoy those languages. Yeah.
And which languages are you looking forward to learning in the future?
Mm. Well, I'm currently learning Tagalog, and I would say it will take me a long time until I master it because I feel like I nailed all the words coming from Spanish origins, but the verbs are still a tricky part. And I have lots of friends from Turkey. You know, I have my students, Magica Savaş. They're always telling me to pick up Turkish, but then I don't know. I just feel like because I was when I was studying Arabic, I don't know why I decided to study Turkish just for a couple of weeks, and it was so hard. I had to give up. I had to drop it, and so I don't see myself going back to the language. But maybe Serbian. Serbian, I feel like I had a lot of fun when I was learning it in high school. So I would say I would probably go back to that Slavic language to Serbian. Yeah.
Hmm. What did you find difficult about Turkish?
I feel like it's a language that works a lot with suffix, prefix, and also like the verb that goes at the end. So sometimes like my students they usually tell me that Turkish is the same as Japanese, in terms of grammar. So there's like always the verb at the end, which is like German, but then it also works like with the you have the measure words, which like you have in Chinese. But then I feel like in Turkish, they're gonna be like another tricky part, you know. I feel like Chinese is enough when it comes to measure words. I wouldn't want to like harm myself with another language like that.
What are measure words?
Measure words are like when you say when you want to say like one beer, okay, you need to add something in between the number and the noun. So you need a specific word, and the word will change for every specific object according to the shape and the function of the
Okay.
object.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's say I want to say an apple. Okay. In Chinese, sorry, in English I can just say an apple. But then in Chinese, because I'm putting a number next to a noun, I need something in between. So it would be like I cannot say I pinguo. I is number one. Pinguo is the apple. I have to say I ge pinguo. So ge in that case would be the measure word that I need for the apple. Mm.
Hmm. I've not heard of that before. I'm very interested in how this works now.
Yeah, no, apparently lots of some of the Asian languages they have this. I'm sure about Chinese and Turkish. Maybe Japanese and Korean they might share the same peculiarity apparently. But yeah, definitely something like before mentioning a number, you have sorry, when you have a number in a noun before the noun, you need this. It's also called classifier. So like some people call it measure word, others they call it classifier. It's like when in English you don't say a banana. A banana is just like one. But if you want to say like a flower, you say a bunch of flowers. So bunch would be like a measure word in Chinese. I mean,
Aha.
this kind of
Okay.
thing. Yeah. But let's just say that in English you don't need for every object, but in Chinese you do for each object. Yes.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Oh my gosh, there's so much I learned from you in this conversation. Thank you so much for joining me and for telling me about all of the languages you speak, especially Napolitano and Mandarin. I like to end each episode with the same question, and that is, do you have any jokes, tongue twisters, slang words, idioms, words of wisdom, or words of advice in any of your languages to share?
Okay. Well, I start off with I'm really bad at tongue twisters. But I can definitely give you some slang words, some idioms, okay, in some of the or some of the languages.
Sure.
So maybe the first one would be in Napolitan. Okay, let's start with the dialect. So there's one I usually make fun of the dialect because there's like these short phrase that when I pronounce it, it sounds like Arabic or like one of those languages, like really I don't know, really weird. So it goes like Nun takalaka makali, Nun takalaka makali.
What does that mean?
So it's like this one actually sounds like a tongue twister, but it's like, let's just say that I dropped something, right? And then a friend of mine would say, "Oh, do not get down. I'll kneel down and pick it up for you." Okay, so like I'm offering myself to pick up the thing that you dropped. So without letting you kneeling down or like, going down to pick it up.
Okay.
You know?
Say
Yes, it's
it,
like
say it
sorry.
again.
Okay. Nun ta kala ka makali. Nun ta kala ka makali.
Nun takalaka. Nun
Yeah, yeah.
nun takalaka
Ka makali.
kamakali.
Yeah, nun ta kala ka makali.
Oh my gosh. You got to write that one down for me so I can practice it.
Obviously, you know that the spelling in Napoleon can vary, for like each person because we don't learn how to write it. We can only pronounce it.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that would be like the pronunciation. So nun would be like non. Ta would be like ti, non ti. Kala is calare or abbassare, like to go down, to kneel down. Ka is like che. Ma is me. Cal is abbasso, okay, or calo, io, I go down. I is io. So I is like the personal pronoun I, like io.
That's amazing. Nun takalaka kamakali.
Yes, that's it. That's it.
All right. I'm ready to come back to Naples now.
Now you're ready. Now you're definitely ready. Then I wanted to share one in Swedish.
Sure.
So this one is like ingen ko på isen. Ingen ko på isen. Literally, it means there's no cow on the ice. Yeah. So this one is like ingen. It means no. There's nothing. Like there's no. Ko is the cow. Okay. Then you have po is the preposition on. Isen is the ice. Okay. So it's like there's no cow on the ice. But actually, it would be like there's no problem. Everything is all right.
Oh, that's cool. Ian
Yeah.
Poisen.
Yeah, ingen ko på isen. Yeah.
That's a good one. I think that's it's no problem. There's no cow on the ice. I like
Yeah,
that.
because it feels like obviously if a cow were on the ice, it would just break, like the ice underneath. So obviously in that case, if there's no cow, the ice is not gonna break, which is like everything is all right. It's like in its own place.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much
Yeah.
again, Salvatore. Thank you for this conversation and for teaching us all so much. Before I let you go, tell me what would be the best way in any of your languages, and don't think about it, just the first one that comes to mind. What would be the best way to say goodbye?
The best way to say goodbye. 再见.
再见?
再见, yeah. I don't know why. The first time that came to my mind was in Chinese. I don't know why. I would just use that one. 再见.
Well, thank you again, 再见, and I will be talking to you soon.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.